throughout the Northeast, including Massachusetts. The state has allocated additional resources towards treatment, while our federal legislators are working not only to increase funding for treatment options, but to increase the availability of the life-saving drug Narcan, which revives the heroin overdose. What do you think we need to do as a Commonwealth to help combat this growing problem?
All right, so yes, we're talking about what we've seen as far as the problem grow to epic proportions over the past several months and year, especially in rural areas. It's no longer a problem that's just plaguing urban centers. Especially up in Franklin County, we've seen the surge in this. We'll start with you, Ms. Anderson. What do you see as the state's role in attacking this epidemic?
In January of this year, Haywood Hospital printed out their new suicide prevention unit, and the information in there was that the state of Massachusetts has 7 suicides for every 100,000 people. Our area has 12.3 suicides. And what they discovered was that it was men mostly, ages 25 to 65, who have been jobless for 6 months. That is the major common denominator amongst them. When people have no hope, they turn to other things, be it alcohol or to drugs. And because of this, the epidemic is getting worse. In our state of Massachusetts, we have lost more jobs. The manufacturing has left. Our towns were known as the mill towns for a reason. We used to manufacture there. We have the Miller's River that runs right through. These things that helped us to grow was manufacturing, helped us to stay together as a community, helped us to have extra funds to go to those mom and pop shops and to those restaurants. Without these things, they feel hopelessness. There aren't the jobs. 1/3 of our towns, approximately, are seniors. Another third, about a third, are on fixed income, whether it's disability or welfare. And because of this, our towns are out of balance. And when your towns are out of balance, they don't feel that hope. They don't feel that they can make it. The jobs are not there. So I've been talking with a doctor down in Springfield area. He said that he is only allowed to have 99 patients concerning this opium epidemic, and he treats them. Because he's only allowed to have 99, if he gets that 100th patient, he will lose his license. And I asked him, why is that? Is it because you have controlled substance, or what is that? So being in touch with him, he said he wants to open a unit up in our area, but he needs legislative help. And we're looking to change some of those laws so that they can help out our area in those ways. A number of people in the Franklin County have had different meetings about this. It is very important to our area, yes, but it's underlying is that we don't have the jobs. If we had the jobs, the addictions would be less.
To looking at attacking what you see as a root cause, the
Yes.
hopelessness through increased
Right.
economic opportunity,
Right.
at the same time increasing treatment options.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Ms. Wilson?
I will completely agree with Mrs. Anderson that the generational hopelessness in our area due to decades of unemployment and underemployment is one of the causes of this. There's also several other causes. There are a lot of drug dealers out there with MD after their name. We need to make sure that we focus on doctors who are over-prescribing and getting people addicted to opiates and medicating people rather than treating people, so they end up on a path to addiction and heroin use. Addiction, substance abuse, and mental health, mental illness, those are issues that every family deals with at one point or another during their lives. And again, the bringing back jobs, bringing back a vibrant economy does help. As a job creator, I know how important it is to offer jobs to people in the community and bring back togetherness and opportunity and just the lack of this hopeless feeling that people have. As the chair of Haywood Hospital's Community Investment Committee, we're working really hard with other parties to bring a rehab and treatment center up into Petersham, hopefully focusing on adolescents and young adults, and there will be a inpatient treatment facility as well as a day-to-day facility, not a Suboxone clinic, not a methadone clinic, but a center where people can go and get some help. It actually is looking as we might have 100 jobs there, which is great for the local economy. It's a repurposing of an old convent, which again is just a great way to bring business in and give a little boost to the area with trips to the supermarket or gassing up your car for the people who work there. So all of the issues, the social ills that we do see in the community come down to a generational feeling of hopelessness. And again, to get that back, we need jobs. We need to create opportunity for people to take care of themselves.
So you vote for addressing the root causes and increasing treatment options relating
Absolutely.
to the opioid epidemic.
But also the harshest penalties for the people who bring this garbage into our communities as well. We have to get serious about how is it getting into our area, how is it getting into our neighborhoods. And when the police chief tells you that bags are selling for $5 or $10, that's some of the lowest costs they've been, and the demand's up, you know that supply is high too. I mean, the basic understanding of supply and demand will tell you that our area is swamped with it. And speaking with our fire chief and other personnel in town, the number of overdoses and use of Narcan continues as well. Our police officers came to our Board of Selectmen meeting recently for permission to carry Narcan in their cruisers to also help. And there's different groups in town that are actually giving Narcan for people to bring home. So I mean, the answer isn't saving people from overdose as much as it is preventing the overdose from getting people to that point.
On the topic of Narcan, which is, it's been, heralded by first responders as an amazing life-saving drug. It can almost instantaneously reverse somebody who's in a complete heroin overdose, unconscious, and on their way to death. Do you both support the proliferation of Narcan as a life-saving tool among first responders?
Absolutely, anything
Yes.
you can do to save a life. But again, if people understand that the fatal dose of heroin, it suppresses your respiratory system to the point where your body just stops breathing, and this Narcan bounces you back. But once we use Narcan on somebody, where do we go from there? How can we help them and get them back to a place where they're healthy and their well-being is in
Looking at the
check?
longer-term treatment.
Exactly, that's a Band-Aid.
Thank you very much. We will take a short break and we'll be back in a few moments. Guys, get over there.
Yeah, we're done, right?
Yeah.
Already?
Stick with
That's good.
your,
The two and then the close.
yeah.
Or, no, you can go, if you wanna go, to 3, you can.
Okay. Well, I had 5, 6, and 7 on the list. 7's the close. But I have the bonus I can slip in there.
Oh, slip in the bonus.
Go.
No, stick.
Six is great? Okay.
10 seconds.
Double jeopardy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Cue roll.
And thank you again for joining us for this edition of the 2014 Campaign Roundtable Series. I'm politics reporter Rob Rizzulo, and we are here with 2 Republican candidates running to represent the 2nd Franklin District in the Massachusetts House. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We are going to talk about the topic of business and luring business to the district. So if a business leader or CEO came to you and said, I'm looking at potentially locating this new facility in your district, but I'm also looking at, say, something next door, somewhere out of the towns that you represent, what would you say to help sell them on the 2nd Franklin District as a great place to do business and grow their industry? And Ms. Anderson, can you start with you?
We actually have some of that already. When talking to different people, there's some good suggestions that have been coming just out there when I'm out door to door talking to the people. One of them is that we have a lot of junk timber in our forest areas. New England was cleared out maybe 100 years ago. There were hardly any trees, and since then we have a lot of lands that were family owned, maybe 30 acres or more, and divided up into smaller acres of 5 and 10, and people put things into conservation, and the problem is that this young timber. It's been about 20 years old now or more, depends on different places. It's called junk timber. It's not good for harvesting to make furniture with, and it needs to be cleared out, or we're going to end up in a situation like California where we have forest fires. And that is becoming a thing that foresters are concerned about. I'm working with a couple of foresters that are going through. And the suggestion has been made that we could have manufacturing in our area using that junk timber and making wood pellets. Wood pellet demand is up high now because people are trying to get away from fossil fuels. And so this would be one way, if we put this manufacturing in our area, it would be, there's a need for it, there's place to manufacture it, we just need to get this assembled. The problem that we're finding is that a lot of our laws, legislative laws, are causing the issues. We have so many taxes and fees that people are getting taxed and fees out of business. And we need to change some of those things so that we can be a self-sufficient state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so that we can sustain ourselves, sustainability with that. And if we could harvest amongst those private lands, we could use those and people could sell off that junk timber off in their property, paying those taxes, increasing the growth, and that could be one of the ways that we could be self-sustaining. It would be awesome if we could get this manufacturing going.
So you're looking at the land, looking at the opportunity
Absolutely.
that the district provides, and trying to
Absolutely.
sell that, and also
Yes.
attacking perhaps the issue of taxes relating to business.
Absolutely.
And perception that Massachusetts is anti-business because of the tax.
Correct, correct. We've had so many businesses leave the state already. We're called Taxachusetts. Unfortunately, it's not because our sales tax is higher than New York, because New York is higher, but it's because of the multiplicity of our taxes. Even if you look at your phone bill, I'm sure there's 5 or more taxes on there. One of them is an advertising tax for their name on your bill. So we have to, if we could curb those taxes, it would bring in more business. It's kind of the story, if you put out one Coke machine or if you put out multiple Coke machines, how much money would you make more? If we would lower our taxes, the business would come in more. And I'm not just talking about the sales tax, I'm talking about the multiplicity of taxes and the multiplicity of fees that we have. And that's what's basically smothering Massachusetts. These people cannot afford to have their businesses with those.
And Susannah?
As a business owner who in the last 6 years has gone from 28 employees up to 68 or 69 this week, I completely understand the taxes, the burdens, and the regulations that are placed on a business in Massachusetts. We're usually listed as number 3 on the list of the least business friendly in the country. Thank God New York and California, I guess, because keeps us from being on the bottom. I have firsthand experience with the legislation and the taxes that businesses face. On a quarterly basis, I'm outreached by Virginia and North Carolina's economic development committees of their state, offering to fly me to Virginia or North Carolina or whatever to look at manufacturing facilities and look at acreage and possibly move my company south. I have such a commitment to my town. I've been in my community for 45 years. My father started my company back in 1977. We're committed to the town. We're not going anywhere. What we need to do is we need to look at some of those punitive taxes that are placed on business. And for example, the inventory tax. I don't know if many people realize in Massachusetts, if you own a business, you pay an inventory tax. It's kind of like you have a house and you pay property tax. Then the government comes in and taxes all your furniture and everything you have in it. Somebody who buys tens of thousands of tons of steel on a regular basis, that really puts a good whopping on you. You know, I mean, it's been difficult to succeed in Massachusetts, but it can be done. We, as employers, we're so grateful to our employees, and they come and work for us and they stay a decade, 2 decades. I've had employees that have been with me for 30 years. And being part of the community and being an active part of the community, I would welcome new business. I'd explain to them some of the techniques we've used to be successful, some of the ways around, but certainly as a legislator, I would know what some of the things that stifle me and prevent me from growing. Frankly, if you look at our company before we hit the 50-person threshold, we actually were more profitable and did better with 50 employees than we do now with 68, just from a financial standpoint. And, you know, our shareholders are all local people who understand it's important for us to stay where we are. But I can see where businesses would look at Massachusetts as a whole and say, geez, I think I could do better elsewhere. One thing businesses do look at, Market Basket, which they're having their inner struggles right now, but Market Basket is in the process of a new grocery store in the town of Athol. One of the reasons they're coming to our town was the investment we've put into our community with a new library, with a new police station, new senior center. And since I've been on the Board of Selectmen, our property tax rate has gone up over 50% over the course of 8 years. And that's due to cuts to municipal aid and other issues, which I hope we get to further on. But for businesses to look at the people in a community or the people in a district and see what they're doing to keep going and see the kind of stock, because we've got good skilled labor that are working in our town and eager to work. And I think the most important thing to do is to introduce businesses to our people, because our towns are all built of people who came with immigrant groups coming to the towns to work for the tool manufacturers or the chair manufacturers in Gardner. You know, I mean, it's getting people to know, businesses to know the people, I think would certainly sell them for our district, and I don't think we've done enough marketing of the area for businesses.
So you're building those relationships and selling the opportunities that are already there, as well as attacking the tax structure on the business side as ways to draw business.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good, thank you. We will switch gears a little bit. The next question is actually relating to medical marijuana. In 2012, the Massachusetts voters approved medical marijuana by way of a ballot question that November. Basically, the law calls for the licensing of dozens of dispensaries across the Commonwealth. And it also removed the criminal penalties for growing marijuana and possession as long as folks have a valid prescription from a medical care professional. So basically the question for you is, do you support the use of marijuana medically, and would you be supportive of dispensaries working to open up in the Second Franklin District? And Suzanne, we can start with you on this.
Well, as a legislator, I will have to look at all sides of an issue, and I have looked very closely at this. As a daughter of a mom who's 80 years old and takes a chemotherapy pill every day, if THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, tetrahydrocannabinol, I think is what it's called, would be helpful to her and bring her some comfort, that would be a decision between her and her doctor. There's also Marinol, which is a synthetic version of THC, which, having a husband in the pharmaceutical industry, I've done a little research and we've discussed that as well. As far as the dispensaries go, I don't know why anybody would go to a particular pharmacy for one drug and have to go to a CVS or another pharmacy for another drug. The dispensaries, the way it's been set up, I don't see the state having a very good plan with regards to the implementation of it. Also, we're seeing it passed a vote, but nobody really wants it in their community. As a business owner, I have to look at medical marijuana and the American with Disabilities Act and accommodations you have to make for employees who are under medication or under a doctor's care. Thankfully, the American with Disability Act considers a federal law of marijuana being illegal, so I wouldn't have to worry about accommodations and changes to an employee who was taking medical marijuana. But if you think about cranes going overhead and forklifts going, the well-being and the safety of for the men and women who work with me is paramount. So I'm torn on the issue of medical marijuana as it stands right now. Again, comfort from my mom who stays home and isn't driving a forklift and operating an overhead crane that might have a ton of metal on it, and the guys in my factory who may, be in danger if one of our coworkers was using medical marijuana. So there's a lot of research to be done. I'm not an expert, but of course as a legislator I would look at all sides of the issue and try to make the most reasonable and safe decision for all of the people.
So you look at the use of medical marijuana as, you support that, but you have concerns about the law itself, the way it's
Exactly. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Absolutely. The same issues as the concerns. When you look in Colorado and some of the other places and the problems that they're having from having the distribution all over the place, if it is a medical condition, a medical prescription, then it should be offered with your other prescriptions. It should be able to be attained at the same place. And again, as she's mentioned, if you are not allowed to drive a car because you're under medical condition that it says don't drive, your doctor says don't do that, I think that marijuana should fall under that too, that if they shouldn't be allowed to work at that workplace, that would put someone in danger if they have those certain medicines. And so I'm in agreement, we shouldn't have it in our area, that the law should be revised. If the federal law says no, and right now, that's what the federal law is, that we should abide by that. And even if we want to make these other changes, I think they better be more examined before they implement them.
So I guess just generally speaking about marijuana as a potential medical option, you're opposed to that?
It's an option if it's prescribed as a medicine, that's one thing. If you can have it from a pharmacy, if you're gonna grow it in your own backyard, there's nobody monitoring who's growing it, there's nobody monitoring how much you take from your own backyard. Exactly, exactly. If you're gonna have a medicine, a medicine's a medicine. But if you're going to use it as a recreational thing, there's something altogether. Who's gonna make those definitions? And they better be very careful with that. So as a medicine, yes, I am in support of it having it as a medicine, but not as somebody growing it in their own backyard, or not as having a dispensary separate from every other medicine that's prescribed.
Treating it more like a controlled substance and the
Absolutely.
distribution network mirroring that of other controlled substances,
Correct.
which is through a specific pharmacy, not a dispensary specifically for this
Right.
plan. Okay.
Right.
Understood. Very good. Thank you very much. And we are looking at this race here. We have State Rep Denise Andrews, who's a Democrat. She has successfully ran 2 terms in the 2nd Franklin District, and now she's running for a 3rd. So to both you candidates, I would just like you to explain to the voters, you know, what about you and your ideas and your dedication to the job makes you a better choice for them, first come the primary in September, and then the general election in November. And Susannah, we can start with you on this.
Sure. Well, Ms. Andrews' voting record speaks for itself. She's never met a tax she didn't like. Our municipal aid has been cut tremendously. I want to go to Beacon Hill to bring back municipal aid, to bring opportunities to people in our district. When I ran against Ms. Andrews in 2012, there was a third-party candidate in the race, also factoring in President Obama and Senator Warren bringing people to the polls. I'm very confident about the general election this time around. I'm a proven job creator. I've got a history of public service and charitability in my community. And honestly, I believe I'm the only candidate out of the 2 of us that has a really good chance of beating the incumbent and bringing back some change. Having a supermajority of Democrats on Beacon Hill has been disastrous for us. Decades of one-party rule has basically created an air of arrogance where these folks don't believe that custom municipal aid hurt families and hurt children and hurt our seniors. We send money to Boston via the lottery and via income tax, which never really makes its way back to us. We get 33 cents on the dollar back for what we pay in income tax. Lawrence, Lowell, Springfield, bigger cities, blue voting cities tend to get in the 80s, 90s cents per dollar back. I'm going to speak out for people. I'm going to demand transparency. I'm going to demand that the 2nd Franklin District get some of the attention. One of the issues that is most hard-hitting to most people who have been there a lifetime is the Quabbin Reservoir. 80 years ago, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts came out and decided they needed a true water source for the folks in Boston. So 4 towns are disincorporated and emptied out for the common good, well, for the Commonwealth, water that we don't even drink. And actually, the day I get sworn in, I'm expecting to pour a glass of water from Boston because I've always wondered what the Quabbin tastes like. I look at it all the time, but I've never tasted it. But I'm feeling good about this race. I'm very confident, and I know I'm the candidate who can beat Ms. Andrews.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
As a mother of 6 and caretaker of seniors, I could be sending the people my resume in the mail and all the things that I could do, but it's not about me. It's about representing the people. And being out there with my little girl who's 3 and talking to the young mothers, I'm hearing what their needs are. Being out there with those that are in grade school, parents of those in the high school levels, parents of those who have college-age children, I have all of that. taking care of my grandmother till she's 94 in heaven now. But for the last 9 years, my other grandmother's 89, I still continue to take care of her. I understand the needs of those seniors because I'm doing it every day. Every day I'm taking care of them. Also, it's not about me that way. I'm also working with cerebral palsy. And working with them, I hire people. I know about business. I've hired 2 people in the last 6 months, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but as a surrogate, I don't have to. But I have to make sure that their timesheets are correct. I have to make sure that their hours are worked. I have to make sure that the stock is ordered. I understand about business, and like other people in our area, they have to pick up small businesses such as Tupperware, Sensi, Pampered Chef, and I've worked in those businesses too. And those things teach you that you are your own boss. If you don't work, you don't get paid. I understand those needs. We've done this. As a mother of 6, this is what our area has to have, is a thing in common, that we would have someone represent us, not themselves, when they get there. And that's why I've been chosen, and I have so many people that have been coming up to me from all the parties, the Democrats, the unenrolled, and the Republican, who are excited to have a voice. And I've asked them repeatedly, send to me what you want represented. Because it's not about me sending you my resume. It's about hearing your voice, what is important to you. That's what needs to be represented on Beacon Hill. And we're going to do that. And I thank you for this opportunity to share.
Karen Anderson, Susannah Masslive.
Thank you.
Thank you ladies both very much for joining us today and discussing the issues. I'd like to thank our journalist panel, Ron Chamelis and Rob Jeunesse. Thank you gentlemen very much. And we'd like to thank the readers and the viewers. We do this all for you. We like to get the information out there and bring the candidates directly to you. This is a very important election year. There's a lot of candidates running for a lot of different offices. And more important than who you vote for is the fact that you get out and vote. So the primary is on September 9th, and the general election is on November 4th. Make time those days and get out to the polls and vote. And thank you very much for watching. And ladies, again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you, gentlemen.
All clear?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much for
Jane.
coming in. Thank you very much. Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
I thought you've both been fantastic, so thank you both. Gave very thoughtful answers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.